Here you go.
So all these Confederate veterans abandoned the war and went AWOL, including Devil Anse, and they created a local militia called the Logan Wildcats. And the Logan Wildcats became a recognized police force, I guess we'll call it, in the area by the governor of West Virginia to help maintain and protect West Virginia's border.
Guys, Logan Wildcats were already up and running. They were already established. And, it was a unit that was credited with. They asked them how they got their name one time, and the original Logan Wildcats, not Devil Anse. But these guys here, another unit had come to fight with them, and when he returned to his unit that evening, they were sitting around the campfire, and somebody asked him, said, how'd the 36 do today? And they said he fought like a bunch of wildcats. And that's how they got their name, Wildcats. They fought like a bunch of wildcats. When Devil Anse deserted along with this bunch of desperados, deserters, he figured he'd save face when he returned home. And so he told them he was coming home to be on the home guard. And that him and his men were part of the Logan Wildcats. Now, Jack, this is the first time we have ever heard this. First time anybody's ever referred to Devil Anse or the Logan Wildcats as police officers. They come home as a police officer group, he said, working for the governor. This is at least before February of 63. We know that he was a deserter at least from February. The records may have been off a couple of months. He may have deserted back in January. Sometimes in the heat of battle, things wasn't up to par. And they had 3 or 4 battles of Pond Creek that they fought during that time. But Devil Anse was not a police officer, and saving face is the reason he told everybody that they was Logan Wildcats, to save face in front of his family. You want to come home and tell your family, yeah, we're deserters, we ran, or you want to come home and say, well, we're going to be on the home front here. Now, they say they was referred to as the Wildcats. Devil Anse's group was also referred to as the Tug Valley Raiders, Desperados, now a police force, but more than anything, they were referred to as the Hatfield Gang.
And you'll see newspaper articles.
Oh, yeah, court records. Court records, newspaper, Hatfield Gang. That's what they were known as in reality. The Hatfield Gang. You ever heard of the James Gang, the Cole Younger Gang? That's what they were. It was after the Civil War. The only thing different, Devil Anse didn't rob banks. They robbed other people. Remember, the men, the real men in that community, Tug Valley area, was all fighting in wars. And on one side or the other. They didn't care. These desperados didn't care. When they returned home, they took what they wanted from anybody they wanted to take it from. Their livestock, their chickens, their pigs, their horses, anything they wanted, their tools. That's what Devil Anse's group did. I've always said it's not hard to get a good start when you steal it from somebody else. Now, he says the West Virginia governor appointed Devil Anse as a police force. See, Jack's confused with Willis Wilson, Kentucky's 7th governor, that was become friends with Devil Anse later on in life. And Devil Anse even named one of his sons Willis after him.
He sure did.
But the first governor of West Virginia, it didn't become a state till 1863 during the Civil War. And the first governor was Arthur Borman from 63 to 69, and he actually served with the Union. Now, we're to believe that this Union sympathizer appointed a Confederate deserter to be the police in his state, or protector. But Devil Anse was in charge of the police force. He's got them mixed up with the West Virginia 7th governor, Willis Wilson. And again, all it takes is a little bit, go ahead, of research, of true research, not just reading a book here and there or watching the History Channel. You cannot stop it there a minute.
Okay.
There was a legitimate Confederate fighting group called the Logan Wildcats.
Exactly.
Their official name was Company D, the 36th Virginia Infantry.
Yeah.
After Devil Anse deserted on or before February of 63, him and those who deserted with him also adopted that name, Logan Wildcats, in order to deceive their families and friends, giving the impression they were still active military and they were just working from home. Bottom line is they were impersonating the real Logan Wildcats, Company D, 36th Virginia Infantry, while they stole, robbed, and murdered under using the military slang Logan Wildcats as their cover, as if they were doing it for the infantry.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, were nothing more than Jesse James or Cole Youngers back in the day. Let it play. This is some boards. That's a big board that we have in the museum
Mm-hmm.
when people's walking around where they can look at and get them a history. Pause it there a second.
Okay.
And they can get a history lesson. You're going to see this paper 2 or 3 times over the next 2 or 3 videos.
Right.
This is actually the indictment dated September of 88.
Mm-hmm.
That's the indictment of Devil Anse of Anderson Hatfield, John C. Hatfield, Cap Hatfield, Valentine Hatfield, Elias Hatfield. Some of those names that are on here are actually people that were members of what was called, AKA Logan Wildcats, or the Hatfield Gang. This is members of the Hatfield Gang.
Mm-hmm.
These 20 men right here, these 20 names are some of the guys that actually stood on a line, tied 3 McCoy boys, 3 of Randall McCoy and Sarah McCoy's sons, boys,
Mm-hmm.
to trees, and some say he stripped them down naked, some say not.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing Devil Anse's mentality, you'll have to figure that out, but I don't want to be like other people and say I know what the story's always been, but we have no proof either way.
And they're charged with willful murder.
Willful murder. That's not just a charge. That's an indictment from Pike County Circuit Court. So that's some of your so-called Logan Wildcats there.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, let it play.
And families were so large back then. I believe there was 13 family members with Devil Anse's family, and you'd come back and you'd find that your family had been pillaged and your home burnt and in ruins. And whether or not you were on one side or the other of the Civil War, the sympathies were pretty much down the middle, I understand. And so you had Union people, you had...
This gentleman here, he corrected Jack. Jack said he had 11 to 13, but he was leaning more toward 11.
Mm-hmm.
This fella here corrects Jack, says Devil Anse had 13 children. Jack shakes his head. And that's correct. That's the correct history.
Mm-hmm.
This gentleman says, the families were large back then. Jack says that after Devil's backbone, that Devil Anse returned home because they had burnt his home. And that's when he decided to stay home. He actually left in the heat of battle, guys. But let's go along with Jack's story there. This gentleman here says, families were large back then. He had 13 children. Guys, he had 2 children. He had 2 children. Who were they,
At
Sheila?
this time, he had Johnsy and Cap.
Johnsy
the
and
2
Cap.
children that he had during this time.
This was 1863.
Mm-hmm.
He only had 2 children during the Civil War. In fact, Cap wasn't even, during this time here that he deserted, he would have only had the 1. Because Cap wasn't born till 64, was he?
Right.
We've got the paper there on the front of this video. We just showed you when the children were born. You can back it up to that and see. But I'm thinking Cap was born in 64. So he was born during the Civil War, but he wasn't. He was born after Devil Anse had deserted. Because he'd done deserted in February of 63. Only 2 children were born, spoken or written into history. No record Devil Anse's house was ever burned. There's never been. That has been spoken into history over the years. There's never been anybody in the old writings, the old books, that said that Devil Anse's house was burned. Unless it would have been a West Virginia Hatfield. But there's never been no history to that.
Okay.
And stories that had been made up in the 2012 miniseries.
Yeah.
After the Civil War, go ahead. Let's get this statement in.
Confederate people, but it went far beyond with the initial cause when things affected your family, correct?
Yeah, far beyond anyone could have ever imagined.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Stop. Just go ahead.
Yeah, let it play.
Okay.
I think
That was going to be our stopping point, guys, to talk.
From that. But what really kicked everything off, I was talking earlier about that Devil's Backbone incident where Devil Anse held off the Union soldiers so his Confederate platoon could escape.
Again, you
just skip, let it run. It just goes through this, but he brought it up again.
So there was some animosity there from that. But what really kicked everything off, I was talking earlier about that Devil's Backbone incident where Devil Anse held off the Union soldiers so his Confederate platoon could escape. I think it was the captain, again, not a historian. So I think it was the captain for the Union crew that was there that Devil Anse took out. He wanted revenge for that situation in the Civil War. So while Devil Anse is out logging, working in his business, that Union captain recruited his best known shot from his platoons, which was a fellow by the name of Harmon McCoy.
Oh.
That was Randall McCoy's brother. So, you
Okay.
Devil Anse saved an entire platoon, but he's a deserter. He says he's not a historian over and over through these videos, but yet he covers these stories like they're history, like they're fact. If you're not a historian, then why tell these stories as if factual? It doesn't clear someone to speak non-truths as though they are history. Backbone, logging during the war,
guarding
the border as the police. Let's talk about logging. He said Devil Anse was logging and the captain had sent his best shot. It's a McCoy. Well, if that's the best shot they had and he missed somebody, then not too good a shot. But let's talk straight. The Civil War is going on, guys. It's chaos. Everybody's just trying to survive. Everybody's trying to. You're out logging. Do you guys?
That's another. Just my thoughts. If he's saying he's logging, then he proves again that he deserted because he's out logging and not fighting in the war.
Well, exactly. If he's logging, he's a deserter. But you wouldn't be logging even. He wasn't logging. He was home hiding or out raiding other people in the Tug Valley area and stealing whatever they needed. Instead of robbing banks, they were stealing from other soldiers that were out fighting. Him and his so-called Logan Wildcats. They were stealing. There was no logging business during the Civil War. Everything was in uproar.
Nobody had time to do that. They were fighting.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Should let that run just a little.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So here we are in the Civil War, they're fighting, and then Devil Anse leaves and founds the Logan Wildcats, but he leaves the war. Randall continues to fight. And I understood, and I may be wrong with this, but I understand that Randall McCoy was actually put in a military prison for a short while. And so when he came out, the Hatfield family under Devil Anse had done well in the lumber industry, and the animosities were just so deep between the two of them, plus the event that you addressed with Asa Harmon McCoy.
Guys, animosity was so high between Devil Anse and Randall McCoy because Devil Anse had let them down. Devil Anse was in that unit. Had Devil Anse just deserted himself, that wouldn't have been no big deal. That's just one man. But when he deserted that day, he took anywhere from 13 to 17 men with him. And you can see there's at least 20 there online with him when he was shooting the McCoy boys, but he took a bunch of guys with him. And that left that unit shorthanded, and they were either killed or taken prisoner of war. The gentleman says Randall McCoy was taken prisoner of war for a short while. A short while?
No.
How about 700 days of your life in the coldest in Illinois, Camp Douglas, Illinois?
And they said there that some of the men, 2 to 3 men to a cot. So, I mean, that was one of the worst conditions people could be in. It's pretty
You
brutal.
know, somewhere down through here, if we haven't got, sometimes I'm getting ahead of the video and it's easy to do, but
That's all right.
he may have even said it. He said after the Civil War, Devil Anse still lived, or he didn't say it. He said that Devil Anse returned to Sarah Ann when he left. He didn't live at Sarah Ann until 1888, after the Cabin Massacre. He would have still lived at Mate Creek during this time. And it may not have come up yet, or I could have missed it, but if you haven't heard it, you will hear where he says that he returned to Sarah Ann after he left. He didn't go to Sarah Ann until 1888. That's when Randall McCoy moved to Pikeville, Kentucky. Go ahead, Doug.
All right. This one was Randall's, and then you'll see Uriah, where he was a prisoner of war as well.
Look where it
What
says
happened when he
Do you want me to go?
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
I should have been looking. Go ahead.
Sorry.
came back and they formed the Logan Wildcats, he turned into a commercialist, he meaning Devil Anse, did he not?
Yes.
Didn't he get into the lumber industry? And wasn't that the big...
Yep. After the war, as you said, things in Appalachia started turning commercial.
Okay.
So he went.
He says there after the Civil War. Earlier, he says that Devil Anse was out logging during the Civil War. He was out logging when the captain sent his best shot to shoot him. Now he says after the Civil War, which would make more sense. It was after the Civil War when Devil Anse started his so-called lumber business. Now they talk about this lumber business like it was just a gigantic thing. Devil Anse was a logger, people cutting trees and people. So he did have a business. He did have employees, but this is not what you would think of as today a big logging operation. Again, they're using saws and axes and so forth like that. But go ahead.
All right.
Into logging and opened his own logging business and became very wealthy utilizing that business. So he brought himself up from absolutely nothing to, there's been rumors, I don't know the number, there's been rumors of up to $5 million of his value back then, in the early 1900s.
Okay, stop it there. $5 million. We've seen videos where they've said $5 million, $7 million, and we figured that's where the other gentleman that made that video had gotten his figure from was Jack. Because I think he trusted Jack as a historian and he repeated what Jack had said. $5 million. Well, after Devil Anse had purchased his monument and it had was placed on his grave and all this and that, the family still owed some on this monument. This is a newspaper article there. The relatives and friends are subscribing to a fund to cover the cost of the monument.
Right.
$5 million, and you're asking for family and friends to help pay for Devil Anse's monument, or at least the balance of his monument. Guys, you got to sometimes look at the evidence. This gentleman says that Devil Anse left. Devil Anse leaves the army. No, he didn't only leave, he deserted. Military terms would be desertion.
That would be the correct term, right?
The correct term would be desertion. He left, if you want to put it mildly, like the Hatfields have always done for Devil Anse, but he ran. He was a coward, and he deserted. He deserted while all those other ones that were left behind to die or be taken POW. Said Devil Anse done well in the logging industry. $5 million. That's not right. Civil War was from 61 to 65. No one was logging during this time. They were at war. Devil Anse did good because he was the Jesse James of the Tug Valley during the war. He done good then because his family was taken care of, and so was the other 13 to 17 to 20 men in his so-called Hatfield gang or Logan Wildcats. They did good because they took what they wanted. Hard feelings and Devil Anse started when Devil Anse deserted and Randall McCoy was taken POW. Jack says that it was because of Asa Harmon's death is when the hard feelings started. The hard feelings started when Devil Anse Hatfield deserted in the heat of battle. Him killing Randall McCoy's brother was just another contributing factor.
See what we got next.
And Devil Anse was actually at home sick during that period of time. Is that what, to your knowledge?
Yeah. I don't think there's been any evidence that he was actually part of the Logan Wildcats. It's quite interesting. That's one part that does baffle me with everything, because they were so instrumental in everything, explicitly for him, about him. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, it was definitely the Logan Wildcats. Jim Vance, Uncle Jim, was part of the Wildcats.
Guys, if you would, you could stop it there.
I did.
If you would, go back and just a snitch there when Jack first started this video.
Mm-hmm.
And at first he said, he was talking about the Logan Wildcats, and Jack says, yeah, I'm not sure. That's a little confusing. I'm not sure if he was part of the Logan Wildcats. He's referring to Crazy Jim Vance. I'm not sure if he was part of the Logan Wildcats. And then he says, well, that's always been confusing. And yeah, there was the Logan Wildcats, and he belonged to the Logan Wildcats. That's not my words. Go back and watch what you just now seen 2 seconds ago. 1 minute he says that there's no evidence that he was in the Logan Wildcats, and he didn't know for sure. Then he comes straight out, makes a direct statement, and says, yeah, he was in the Logan Wildcats. This next picture coming up in a minute is going to be the book. You know, there's only 2 books that was written during this time. We've said it in our videos before, and that's T.C. Crawford, his book that interviewed Devil Anse. He was a New York reporter. And Sam McCoy, Big Sam McCoy, Squirrel Hunting Sam McCoy wrote a book, or at least he wrote the memoirs. And he wrote the stories of what had happened. Go to the next picture, babe, see if it comes up there where they can.
It should be what's next there, and then I'll pause it so they can.
Sam McCoy says that their first trouble originated in the time of the Civil War. The cause I never learned. Well, the cause was of the hard feelings when Devil Anse had deserted. But he goes on to say that it come a big snow, and that Asa had gone up to a cave. He was trying to protect his family, more or less, and he got away from the house afraid that Devil Anse and Jim Vance and those would come calling and burn him out. So he was hiding in a cave, and this is Sam here, and he says that a big snow come, and Aunt Patty, Asa's wife, had taken breakfast to him that morning. And when she got back home, Anse Hatfield and Jim Vance, known as Old Jim Vance, he lived on Grapevine, which is true, in Logan County. I don't remember just how many in number, but 5 or 6 maybe. And they all lived in Logan County, West Virginia, and taken to Patty's tracks and followed them. Now, they followed Patty's. We always heard that it was the slave. He had a slave named Pete.
Right.
And Pete was like part of the family. They treated their slave like he was part of the family. Somewhere along the way, Devil Anse Hatfield and Jim Vance and their group tracked somebody through the snow where they had took Asa's breakfast to him, and then they killed Asa McCoy. Now, again, whether it was Pete or whether it was Patty, somebody followed tracks to the snow. Now, who would I believe? I would believe the man right here. This man was there. He said he went the next day to Patty's house, to his aunt's house, and Patty told him that Devil Anse and Jim Vance, along with a bunch of men, had come calling for Asa. Go ahead.
Let's see what we got here now.
Stop it right there. He said, I understand that Devil Lance was homesick.
Right.
And of course, again, according to Patty McCoy Ace's wife, and this was back in 1865, January the 7th. So would there have been any reason for her to have lied? Would there have been any reason for her to say Devil Lance was there or he wasn't there? If it wasn't the truth, there wouldn't have been no reason for that. Martha told him Devil Lance and Jim came along with the others looking for Ace.
Right.
Go ahead. What was it?
Okay.
About P.C. Crawford and Jim Vance. Homesick.
Yeah.
Devil Lance was homesick. If you'll notice throughout history, and that's from early Hatfields, that's when they always tried to take care of Devil Lance and protect Devil Lance. He was homesick, they're saying. And very well could have been, because you're going to see later on December of 88, New Year's Eve, that he stayed home and told him he was sick because he didn't want to go. He didn't have no problem sending his children or his uncle or his nephew, but he didn't want to go. But we'll discuss that when it comes up. Go ahead, baby.
All right.
Members of both families. And is it true that at one time they were just the best of friends? You know, the Hatfields on the side of West Virginia, Tug River, they lived there. And then the McCoys on the Kentucky side, and they were happy and harmonious. And then the war happened, and then all of this exploded and ignited into the feud.
Hatfields on the West Virginia side and the McCoys on the Kentucky side. How many times have you guys ever heard that? How many times have you ever heard that? West Virginia's Hatfields and Kentucky's McCoys. Wow. Well, my great-great-grandparents, Preacher Ance Hatfield, Anderson Hatfield, and Polly Hatfield, lived on Blackberry Creek, right there at the cabin where the election was held, and the killing or the stabbing of Ellis and Hatfield and so forth. Why do we continue to say the Hatfields of West Virginia and the Kentuckys of McCoys? That's not, look on that indictment warrant earlier, or we'll probably show it again.
Yeah, I think we have it maybe one or two more times in here.
But look at it. Look about halfway down and see what names you see. You're going to see 3 McCoys.
3 of them.
3 McCoys are on that indictment for actually helping to kill 3 of their McCoy cousins from Kentucky. Those 3 McCoys are actually from West Virginia. So it's not like West Virginia was full of Hatfields and Kentucky is full of McCoys. Hatfields and McCoys lived on both sides. And when you make statements like this, it gives people the wrong impression, like it was one state against the other. Wasn't. There was those families that lived on both sides. Hatfields on the Kentucky side, McCoys on the West Virginia side. Okay.
Randall McCoy stayed in and fought, did he not?
Yes, he did. He stayed in and fought, and there was some animosity, of course, over that. Because they see, the Logan Wildcats. They were deserters of the war.
Okay.
We've discussed it. Deserters. That was where the hard feelings came from.
Ready?
Deep felt animosities between Randall McCoy and Devil Lance Hatfield, and the hardship of the families was so bad. And now we have this captain that had tried to take out Devil Lance.
Okay, you want to talk about that?
Captain that tried to take out Devil Lance. It's a myth, guys. There's never been, there's always been stories about this one and that one being killed. That's there's all the Civil War records. And if we're wrong, please, we would love to have it in our museum. We would love to put it in a book.
Yeah. That would be something else we could add.
There's every kind of Civil War documentation and battle and records out there. They did keep records during the Civil War. There's nothing that has ever substantiated or backed up anything that Devil Lance had killed any captain or general, that Devil Lance was attempted assassinated by anybody. Again, he was barely there long enough to get a uniform, much less to wreak havoc on anybody.
War. Did he not fight with the other head, the other patriarch of the McCoy family? They were friends, Randall McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened when Devil Anse left the war? He came back to Sarah Ann.
There's where he says Sarah Ann.
Let it play.
Okay.
Devil Anse left the war. He just left.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Jack Hatfield Jr., third great-grandson of William Anse, Devil Anse Hatfield. They called him Devil Anse, a man they said was 6 foot of devil and 180 pounds of pure hell.
Wow. That's what they said. That's what they said in some of the Hatfield books in the early years before people started researching and going and getting the documentation from Civil War records. Guys, remember, back during the Civil War, nobody knew Devil Anse Hatfield, Anderson Hatfield. Nobody knew Randall McCoy. Their names didn't stand out. There would have been no reason to make Devil Anse 6 foot or 5'6". There would have been no reason to make Randall McCoy a deserter or a guy that stayed and fought in the battle. They wrote it and they called it like they saw it. Again, there it says rebel deserter, 5'6". This gentleman here, and of course he's reading some Hatfield history, 6 foot and 180 pounds of hell.
Right.
He may have been 180 pounds of hell, but he was 5'6" tall, according to his Civil War records. Not just one record,
Right.
not just two, but several times during his Civil War, deserter, muster rolls, and different things, emancipation. He's listed as 5'6".
Mm-hmm.
And I think if a person was standing there in front of you and you're letting him put his X on a paper to sign, that you would know if you're 6 foot tall or if you're 5 foot, whatever, you could look at him and say, well, what, they got this guy down 5'6". This man's taller than I am. Well, they got this man down. It is what it is, guys. You go by the documentation, and that's what this is. This is what you call factual history.
Okay, let's see what we got here. I think this is pretty much the
I do
end,
too.
but we'll see.
They get 3 videos. At least we'll have 3 videos. Sheila. Like we say in nearly every video, if we have stated anything incorrectly, please contact us with proof, and we will gladly correct it.
Mm-hmm.
Shit. Go
Fred
ahead.
and I do not want to intentionally disseminate any untruth or false information. We want the truth, the correct information in our videos. It will take more than I heard this or I read this. We want proof by showing us documents that we are incorrect. And we will apologize and correct our mistake once we are proven incorrect. You won't embarrass us, hurt our feelings, or make us mad. We welcome any corrections. We want our portrayal of history to be correct. Together, we can correct misinformation and mistruths from the past. Thank you.
And guys, that's it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know everybody sees these disclaimers. I don't know if they ever read them or not, but that's it in a nutshell.
Yep.
Ask anybody that's ever showed us proof on a mistake or incorrect information that we've put out, and we've corrected it. And you have to show us proof. You can't say I heard or I read or I watched this on, and you're going to hear in the second video, you're going to hear where he says, I seen this on the History Channel. Well, you might as well be watching Sanford and Son, because that's a movie. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We hope you stay with us. We hope you, again, this is not a personal attack.
Exactly. Please don't think that.
This is not a personal attack. This is history that has been, and you'll hear at another video or two, maybe the last video, but where they talk about that they've enjoyed discussing history. Well, that's not history that they're discussing when you say some of these stories that's inaccurate. That's not history. That's spoken into history. Join us on the next one.
Okay, until then, we'll see you on the next one.